Okay, so good morning, everybody. As Dr. Dara said, my name is Lindsay McCall Long, and I am a retired police officer from Arizona. I worked for Tempe, Arizona before I retired, or excuse me, Tempe PD before I retired. And I'd like to say thank you for being here with you all this morning, first of all, and all the work that BluePaz is doing. And I really loved Chief Gang's presentation. I mean, what a presentation to come behind. And I'm actually glad I get to come behind him as a line level employee and to hear his passion for his department and his views on what mental health should look like in a police department. And, I don't have a presentation, so you guys are just going to have to look at this space for the next 45 minutes or so. But I am going to tell you about my personal story and my journey to wellness. And actually, a lot of the things that I went through, Chief Gang hit on. 100%. I was sitting here taking notes, like when he was talking about, like, what is the culture of mental health in your police department? I can say that I was very lucky in Tempe that the culture had changed a lot. When I was working under Chief Sylvia Moyer and our previous chief for the department, she made a change as far as putting officers' mental health in the forefront and really digging deep. And we had a lot of changes that happened in our own peer support. And we had great people on the peer support team, but we were being put first, which was fantastic. I had great help and I responded very well to our peer support team because of where I was mentally prior to my critical incident. And that's something we're going to get into this morning. And also because the team admitted where they made mistakes and they corrected those mistakes. And I love the part about the active listening that the chief talked about too. And I'm going to touch on that in my story as well. So a little bit about me. I was in law enforcement for 17 years. I actually started at Gwinnett County Police Department in Georgia. I moved to Arizona in 2008, where I worked for Paradise Valley for a little bit before going over to Tempe. And the crazy thing is, I never even planned on being a police officer. I used to lie and tell people I wanted to be a cop since I was little because it sounded better. But that's not the case with me. I went to college because I wasn't ready to be a full-blown adult yet. And I figured my mom would still pay my bills if I went to college. And I majored in criminal justice. And yes, that sounds like that's because I wanted to be a police officer, but it wasn't. It sounded interesting and it had the least amount of math classes, and I'm not a math person. And don't tell my son that because he loves math, but I'm not a math person. But I needed to do an internship to graduate. And I was like, where am I going to do an internship? So I just happened to live in Gwinnett County at the time. I said, well, I'll just do it at the police department. No big deal. I remember thinking, like, the first 3 weeks of that internship, like, oh my goodness, this is a terrible job. You babysit grown people all day. And I was a 23-year-old, sheltered, still living at home college kid. And I'm like, I don't want to have to tell grown people what to do with their lives every day. And then I saw an officer like truly help somebody, not just take somebody to jail, but actually help somebody. And that clicked with me because of many of us that are here participating who are in law enforcement, we've always been the caregiver. We've been the person that people came to fix problems. And so that spoke to me. So eventually I applied. They hired me right before my 24th birthday. And I remember showing up at Police Academy almost every day thinking, why am I here? And I got out onto the road and then boom, a whole new world opened up to me. So when I look back on my rookie years, Gwinnett County was a large department and it was fast paced. It was boom, boom, boom. There were no lunch breaks. There was no downtime. And so when I look back on my rookie years, I can now pinpoint, because of the work I've done on myself, times where I should have gotten help, but at that time, nobody was talking about, post-traumatic stress. Nobody was talking about cumulative stress. It was rub dirt on it and move on, right? Luckily, I had a good group of friends, and I feel like we all kind of downloaded in our own way. We did talk to each other, but we also did what cops love to do. We didn't sleep well, we partied hard, we worked hard. And I often tell people there is a 2-year time period where I don't even remember, because all I was doing was partying, drinking too much, and working my regular duty and my off duty, right? Just so why? Because when you have to think, you got to come to reality, and who wants to do that? So that was Lindsay in her early and late 20s. So fast forward to my life now. Like I said, I was working as a police officer in Tempe, and me and my zone partner were involved in a shooting on October 29th, 2018 in Tempe, Arizona. But before I get to the critical incident, I want to talk about the year leading in to my critical incident. Actually, a little over a year leading into my critical incident. So I'm married, and I have 2 kids. My family lives here. We love hanging out with each other, and just hanging out, eating, having a good time with each other. I've always been the one that wants to keep everybody together and let's kumbaya and everybody let's get along. But after the birth of my second child, something shifted in my personality. I had such a great birth experience compared to my first one. So I was living off of adrenaline for a while, but once that subsided and the newness of having, now being a new mom of 2 kids instead of 1. So I have an infant at home and a toddler, and, my husband working, and we worked opposite shifts at that time. Days and hours, we worked opposite shifts. I always tell people we saw each other long enough to have 2 kids. Okay. And that was it. Then something shifted, and I just didn't feel like myself. I was withdrawn. The house was not staying clean, and anybody who knows me knows I am not a neat freak by any stretch, but what was going on was different than what was normal for me. And I had my daughter in January of 2017. So about fall, winter of 2017, my husband bravely comes to me. And I say bravely because if you've ever dealt with a woman who's pregnant, hormonal, or in a postpartum era, you kind of want to be careful some days, right? And says, hey, baby, I love you, but something's not right with you. And we should probably go to the doctor. And I didn't bite his head off because I knew he was right. I knew something was going on with me. I just couldn't put my finger on it. And so I didn't put up a fight, and we went to the doctor. And I say we went to the doctor because oftentimes when I'm talking to women about postpartum and things like that, it's just them that are dealing with that. It's not their significant other, their partner, their husband, or whoever else is in their household. It's just them. And this is not a mom problem. This is not a female problem. This is a family problem. So my doctor was fantastic. My doctor, incorporated my husband into my plan to get better. And we started off slow because what I didn't want was to be put on medication. So we started with little things like yoga, meditation, me having time for just myself, me and my husband having time together. And eventually, and I say eventually, I'm talking about within a week of that first appointment, I was on medication. As much as I fought it and I didn't want to do it, let me tell you, it was probably the best thing for me. I felt like myself again. I was like, man, like there's the Lindsay that I missed. Like I haven't seen or heard you in such a long time. Me and my husband were in a better place because we were communicating better. I was trusting that he knew how to take care of me because I'm the one that would go out in the street and help other people live their lives a certain way, but I'm not used to allowing people to help me in that way. I was taking care of myself. I was sleeping better. I was eating better. I was exercising. There's an office here in Arizona called Heart Fit for Duty, which is a medical office that caters to first responders. And in the spring of 2017, they came in and did a presentation for us. It was either 2017 or 18, but they came in and did a presentation. And I remember listening to the woman that came to do the presentation thinking, I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want the heart disease. She was talking about our shift work, our sleep that is crazy, the foods that we eat, the stress, and it takes a toll on our bodies. I don't want to be one of the people who die within 5 years of retirement, because I just started thinking about my kids when I was listening to her, because I started having kids in my mid-30s. So if I'd retired at my 20 with Tempe, my kids would be in middle school. And I'm like, not what I'm looking to do. And I wanted to make a change. So I started going to the office. I did the blood panels. I started changing my food. And it was nice, because they check in with you and they tell you what's for your body and what's not. There's measurements, there's all these things that go into it, but it's geared towards the life that we live as first responders, which I think is very important. And so that kind of helped me be on this road, even after I was put on my medication for my postpartum depression. And so things were good. Things were moving along with me. Things were pretty good. And I was in a good place overall before my critical incident happened. And I like to talk about that because a lot of times in law enforcement, we're not, or first responder world, we're not in a good place before that big thing happens. When we go to training, we constantly train for the big thing, the shooting, the stabbing, even natural disasters, depending on where you live. But we really don't talk about the muscle memory of emotions and of resiliency, right? If some first responders, we were all in a room and all of a sudden somebody came in and started shooting, or there was a problem, we would immediately jump to action, moving and drawing, doing all the things that we're trained to do. But then what happens after that? That's the part that we don't often talk about. So I was in a good place, and when you're in a good place, you don't get knocked down as far as you do when you're already in that bad place. And I've been in that bad place. And I often say, if I was in a mental state that I was in even 2 to 3 months prior to my critical incident, I don't know that I would be where I am today, because I hadn't made that complete mind shift yet. And I think that's important. And a lot of us are always hanging on by a thread, and we need to be in that good place. We need to be taking care of ourselves because, we take care of our cars better than we take care of ourselves. And I'm talking about our personal cars and our patrol cars. Out here in Arizona, people love their trucks. They love their recreational vehicles. Things are shined, lifted, graphics, all of this stuff. They're getting oil changes. But we don't take the time to do that for ourselves. Even the department, you got to get that patrol car in for your preventative maintenance. You got to. And if you don't, guess what happens? Then the sergeant's on your ass, then the lieutenant, then the yard is on your ass. And so that struck me one day, because I said, wow, like, departments care more about that car getting their oil change than they do the officer that's driving it. Where's the officer's preventative maintenance? Where's that? Where's the, hey, you know what, John, you had a rough day today. You had a rough couple of calls. Why don't you take a break, go sit in a quiet room? We'll send somebody over from peer support, or just take a walk with you. Where is that? But yet we do it for our cars constantly. So you have to take care of your cars because it will break down. Well, you have to take care of you, otherwise you will break down, right? So, like I said, life is good for me. I'm plugging along, living life, got my cute little kids, my husband, I'm feeling better. I'm trying to tell other people to feel better. And, that was the other thing, like I said about, you have to live what you're teaching. I started feeling yucky out in patrol because I'm telling people to live their lives a certain way, and I'm not taking care of myself. I'm up late, not sleeping and not eating right and not properly taking care of myself, but I'm going to tell somebody else to do that. So that started to not sit right with me. So life is happening. And then October 20th, 2018 came. Now that's not the date of my critical incident. That's the date where Gwinnett County Police Officer Antoine Tony was shot and killed in the line of duty. I didn't know Officer Tony, but you don't have to know somebody to feel something, right? And I started getting these phone calls from my friends. I'm still very close with my PD family back in Georgia. And I started fielding phone calls for people. And I immediately jump into helper mode. I put my peer support hat on, right? And I cried with, I cried with people on the phone. I heard people just vent and be angry. There was confusion. I talked to people who were, on scene and all this stuff. And I started to take on a lot of that emotion, right? And so the thing with Officer Tony is he was dispatched to a occupied suspicious vehicle. And at a school, he arrives on scene, gets out of his patrol car, attempts to contact the people in the car, never got a chance to say anything to him before they started firing on him. And he was shot several times. The assailants drove away, and he died. He did not get a second chance. And it's frustrating because, we know criminals who will get shot or will be will be in the middle of a crime, and either whether it's the police or another criminal that ends up shooting them several times, and they will get that second chance, but this officer didn't. And he was a 3-year veteran. He had just turned 30 3 days before the shooting happened, very well liked in the department. And people were just confused and hurt and upset because they hadn't had anything happen like that in Gwinnett County in so long. And because I couldn't physically be there with my friends, I felt helpless. I felt very distant, and I just wanted to be there for them. So I did what I could do to bring myself as close to their level of emotions as possible, which was I read every article about Officer Tony. I looked at pictures of him. I listened to stories that people shared about him. I watched the funeral procession. I watched people line the streets on the freeways of Gwinnett County in the way I've never seen it before for an officer. I watched the funeral ceremony itself. I watched officers who were my academy instructors who now have rank talk about this young man. I watched his academy mates get up there and cry over him and talk about all the things they were going to miss, because I was doing my own version of self-harm. I called it virtual self-harm because I couldn't physically be there to go through this with my people. And if any of you have seen the movie Backdraft, I have very much that mentality of you go, we go. So if you're going to be fucked up, I'm going to be fucked up. If you're going to be emotional, I'm going to be emotional. That's, good, bad, or indifferent. That's my mentality when it comes to people that I care about. But I didn't realize the toll emotionally that this was taking on me over these 9 days, right? Checking on people, people at the command post. Eventually, I ended up talking to them, people with rank, and, there was a manhunt for the people who committed this crime. One ended up in an altercation with police, and he was shot and killed, and another one is currently in jail. But that, just because, it has ended like that doesn't mean all those emotions go away, because people are reeling from this. And at the time, I worked Saturday through Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I was headed to work the morning of the 27th, which was a Saturday. And like I said, my husband and I worked opposite shifts, so he was sleeping. My mom would come over and watch our kids. And I'm driving to work, minding my business on the freeway, and my mom calls me. And you gotta love moms, because moms know how to uplift you and push your buttons all at the same time. So my mom called me about something that I felt was so insignificant when it came to my kids. And I started to react. I didn't say anything to her yet, but I can feel the emotion bubbling up inside of me. But the prior week was starting to take hold. It was about to bubble over. And I got off the phone with her, and I remember feeling so angry, and I squeezed my cell phone and I threw it down in the floorboard, and I just started crying, like that sobbing, like couldn't breathe type crying. Now, mind you, I'm driving, right? Maybe not the best place for it. but I didn't know what to do, and I just didn't know how to stop it. And don't tell DPS, but as I'm sobbing and emotional, I'm reaching over in the floorboard to find my phone, because even though my mother was the one who had toppled my Jenga tower, I had a lot of holes in the base of my Jenga tower from the previous week. And she's the one that took that last block and just toppled everything. But she was the first person that I called. So she wants me to come home. And I'm like, I'm not ready to come home yet. And she's like, no, you need to come home. And I said, let me go to work, talk to somebody. Went to work. There was a sergeant on duty that I really liked and trusted, because my sergeant was out for training. And I contacted them and we talked. I cried. And he says, you know what? You need to go home and spend time with your family. I said, okay. So I go home. My mom has woken my husband up at this point, and we end up going to breakfast, which was a rare occasion that me, my husband, my mom, and my kids could all be in the same place at the same time. It just so happens that the restaurant we went to was actually doing a fundraiser with the 100 Club. And for those of you all who aren't familiar with the 100 Club, there are an first responder organization that helps officers, firefighters, first responders, period, who've been injured or lost their lives in the line of duty. So great. I do my fundraiser thing. We have a great meal. Well, Sunday morning comes along. I don't feel that good. Like, I didn't feel mentally with it to go to work. I'm not one of those people that goes to work when I'm not mentally or physically present, because that can get people hurt. And I didn't come to work. So I said, okay. So then Monday morning, I'd wake up. I said, okay, I think I'm good. I'm going to go into work today. So I go into work, and the first person that contacts me is a good friend of mine. She was on light duty and she was pregnant at the time. And when Chief Gang was talking about that active listening piece, this is where my friend comes in. She says to me, because I would check in with her almost every morning, because anybody who's been pregnant or injured on at work, that can be a very lonely feeling. You can feel very distant because you're not always with your shift or your squad. And for some reason in police departments, at least this has been my experience through 2 pregnancies, people feel like the larger your stomach gets, the lower your intelligence gets. I'm still the same cop, just a different shape, right? She says to me that morning, hey, Linz, I noticed you haven't been at work for the last couple of days. Is everything okay? Pause. Now, to me, that pause is very significant, and what this conversation, I truly believe, saved my life that day. People like to fill space when there's silence, right? She leaned in. She didn't just walk by and say, hey, Linz, how you doing? And keep walking, because my body language is saying, I don't give a shit about your response. But she leaned up against the wall with her pregnant belly and waited. And I just verbal diarrhea. Everything that had been going on with me since the 20th, I just let loose, because only one other person at work knew that was going on. My family knew, but nobody else at work, just one. I told her everything I was feeling, the anger, the hopelessness, the confusion, and how was this fair that this young man was taken like this? And this is all he's wanted to do since he was 5 years old. I was not that person. This is what he wanted to do. And he was so well liked. I mean, so well liked in the community. And he doesn't get a second chance to put good out into the world. How is that fair? And then I said the thing that I believe jinxed me, because, cops were superstitious. Don't say quiet, don't say slow, because the radio blows up, right? I looked at her and I said, I've been dodging the proverbial bullet for 15 years. I don't understand how this kid only gets 3, okay? Fast forward 6 hours later, she hears me being shot on the radio, all right? So just to get into our me and my partner's critical incident, we were dispatched to serve an order of protection, which stemmed from domestic violence. And we met down the street, we looked over the paperwork, nothing jumped out at us that said, hey, maybe we should take more people, because I get those questions a lot afterwards. And we're walking up, my partner asked the girlfriend, this was a Monday, and the domestic violence incident had happened sometime Friday or Saturday. And my zone partner asked the woman, were there any weapons in the house? And I know she'd asked her this multiple times. She said no, but we live in Arizona. So just because you say no doesn't mean there isn't a firearm in the house. So we're walking up, there is a carport, it's a small house. So the carport's to the left, the front of the house is to the right. We walk up and she unlocks the door because a previous officer had attempted to serve the same order and he would not answer the door. We knew he was there because his car was there and he had been texting her because he was upset because he knew that she didn't go to work. He knew that she went to the police at this point. So she unlocks the door because she has standing in the residence. She calls his name, but she didn't go all the way in. And I was like, that's interesting because anytime I've been on a call where a man was being put out of a residence, the female is standing front and center watching him leave with his stuff, but that didn't happen. And this is one of those times where thoughts were happening too quick to articulate, but it was nice because once I talked to my partner later, we had the same thoughts, but just like I said, too fast to really communicate that with each other. So right as that thought finishes, I see my partner who was ahead of me taking out her flashlight. Now, anybody knows anything about Arizona? Because I grew up in Georgia. We don't believe in clouds here. It is sunny most of the year. Even it can rain at one point and be sunny like it never existed about 15 minutes later. So this is about 2:30 in the afternoon. So the sun is very high at this point. Oh, I'm sorry, this was closer to 3 o'clock. So let's say about like 2:50, 2:55. And she's taking her flashlight out. I'm like, why is she taking her flashlight out? Like, it's bright as all get out here. Well, I step into the house because we go from outside into a small laundry room into a kitchen area. And I look and I was like, oh, because the house is dark. I mean, the house is dark, dark. And we use blackout curtains here in Arizona, but the house was eerily dark, I remember. As soon as that thought passes, I hear my partner talking to somebody. So she can see a male coming up a hallway that I can't really see until I shift further in the house. So it's a male wearing a tank top and shorts, not walking fast, not walking slow, walking towards us. My partner says who we are and that we needed to talk to him. And probably when he got, I'd say anywhere between 10 to 12 feet from us, she says, I need you to take your hands out of your pockets. And he obliged, but he came out shooting. He had a 6-shot revolver. He just came like right across from right to left shooting. So my partner got hit in her left upper arm. My muscle memory kicked in, my training kicked in, right? So I go to draw and move to get out of the way. Well, just that quickly, I was shot in my right forearm. And I turned to run out of the laundry room door. I was then hit in my upper arm, my upper left arm. And I don't know the sequence of shots, but maybe it happened at the same time. But my partner was able to return fire and he was struck in his side. The bullet came out of his chest. He had his arm outreached because he was running directly behind me, and I got shot in my back. I got shot in the lower part of my vest, and I felt like I got kicked by a horse because, you know, our vests are made to absorb a lot of that energy, and Lindsay took all that energy. Because it was over my kidney, it knocked my legs out from under me, so I fell down to the right, and that caused him to run to the left. And he had one more bullet in his firearm. I forgot to mention he did fire one back at my partner, but that got lodged in the door jamb. And there was one left. He hopped over a neighbor's wall and ended up killing himself. So when I say I was down, to me, I felt like I was down for probably 30 or 45 seconds, but it was a very short period of time. My body camera came off, but you can hear me hit the ground and then jump back up. But in those seconds on the ground, they talk about things slowing down, like that's not a lie. Things slowed down. I had 3 very distinct thoughts that went through my head at that time. One was, oh shit, I'm paralyzed, because I could not feel my legs for a hot second. Second thought was, if I look over my shoulder to see where he is, I don't want to get shot in the face if he's standing over me. And then, you know, they talk about training. And yes, I'd been at Tempe since 2009, but my training and the words from my academy instructors came back to me all the way from Gwinnett County Police Academy. And that was, you will go home today. And my kids popped into my head. At the time, my daughter was 22 months, my son was 4. And I was very motivational in what I said to myself at that point. And when all of those words were rushing into my brain, I said, bitch, get up. This is not where you die. This is not where we die. If we die, we're gonna die down the street fighting. So I jump up, I run down the street just to take cover behind a tree, because we're in a neighborhood and they have a lot of big established trees, and just to get my bearings. And, you know, my mic is swinging. I'm looking at my arm that's broken and crooked, you know, as a through and through. So I can see blood, I can see tissue coming out of my arm. And I'm just trying to figure out life because I couldn't hear anything and things were starting to narrow in, trying to figure out where my partner was the whole while. She's talking on the radio very calmly, and not nearly as calmly as me, but it's fine. I'll get over that. She did a great job. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, where is she? And I bet you she chased after him, because to me, like she's a rock star to me, and I need to be chasing after him. Well, I drew my hurt arm to my chest because I'm right hand dominated. It was my right arm, but training kicked in, drew it to my chest, reached across to draw with my support hand, no gun. So you want to talk about a pucker factor, right? So I can't now take an arm and a half to a known gunfight. So now I'm trying to think like, oh, I must have dropped it in the house when I got shot. So I was caught in this OODA loop of running back and forth between going back to the house or staying behind cover, back to the house, staying behind cover. And the thing, I knew my partner was okay because I could hear her talking on the radio, but the thing that broke me out of that OODA loop is I could hear sirens. And that's when I said, Lindsay, you know what? We're done. We can't do anything else here because, you know, what are you going to do with a 2-shot arms and no gun? So officers got to me. Officers were able to extract my partner because at that time she was still in the house. Okay. So we're taken to the staging point and we're taken to the hospital. All right. So that's my critical incident there, kind of in a nutshell. I always tell people, if you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But, you know, we're law enforcement. We've heard a lot of critical incidents. My critical incident is important to me, but I don't want to bog you all down with the details of that, because what I want to talk to you about is the aftermath of my shooting, and also, you know, how important peer support was and where I am now, right? So when we talk about the aftermath, I'm talking about like coming to grips with reality and being like, wow, like I got shot, like that's crazy. And me catching up with the fact that that happened, and the hospital, and, you know, just all the emotions that you go through, and the pain, the surgeries, and all this other stuff that happens. So I have a list of things. There was disbelief, there was depression, there was anxiety, there was worry, my kids, my husband. I felt useless at the time. You know, I'm the one who does stuff around the house. Not that my husband doesn't, but I'm mom and I want to do mom things. Well, I'm trying to rest. I need help doing everything. And my daughter was 22 months and I was still breastfeeding her at that time. And all she wanted to do was nurse. And I kept telling her no because of all the meds in my body. And she must have stalked me for like a week after I got home. And one day I just looked at my husband and I said, you know what? I'm just going to nurse her. It's just Percocet in my system at this point. I had that when I had my cesarean with my son and nursed him just fine. So I laid down because I often nurse laying down. I laid down and she came over to me and laid down and she latched on. And it didn't occur to me until recently that I needed that moment more than she did, because she wasn't nursing for nutrients at that time. She was nursing for comfort. And when I say I needed that more than she did, is because I needed to feel useful. I didn't feel useful at that time. I was in pain, my back hurt, my hip hurt, my arms hurt. And I had to have people do so many things. Just taking a shower was a chore. And when you're right hand dominated and your right hand is out of commission, things get real when you go to try to wipe yourself in the bathroom. There is no gentle wipe. You just got to get in the shower after that. And I refuse to let my husband come in and help. Yes, we're married, but he doesn't need to know me like that. Okay. So breastfeeding my daughter was the only thing Lindsay could do for her. People could play with her. People could take her outside and take her to the park. People could even make her and give her other food, but only I could nurse her like that. And that's something I could do, and I felt useful, and I needed that so much. And I needed the hormone release that you get from nursing also. So that's something I definitely learned. And then in this time, because at the end of next month will be 3 years since my shooting, I medically retired in August of last year, so getting that news was like a punch in the gut. I was at home for 8 months. And I did a lot of emotional eating. There was about a 20-pound weight gain that happened. I'm not one of those people that doesn't eat when they're stressed. I eat it all. And then I cry and I'm upset about it because I'm eating it all, but then I keep eating it all. And so a lot of that happened. I came back to work in July of 2019, and something I wasn't prepared for was my son. He was 4 when the shooting happened. He was 5 as I'm going back on light duty. I wasn't prepared for what worry and anxiety looked like on a 5-year-old. And that's a tough one for me, because we've created this very supportive, very sheltered and loving environment for our children. And then someone, the suspect, who will never meet my family and who isn't even here anymore to take responsibility for the ripple effect that he's caused, not just here in Arizona, but to my friends in Georgia as well. Remember, they lost an officer on the 20th of October. And then I get shot on the 29th. And they're just boom, boom with the stress and with the trauma just being compounded. And so my son was not his normal, helpful, intuitive self at school, because he was in preschool and his teachers were telling me he was falling asleep at random times. He wasn't eating. And if anybody knows my son, they know he can eat. I'm gonna tell you what. And he was sneaking my uniform shirts to work with him. To school, excuse me. With him, he was wearing them, he was napping with them. And then his teacher asked him, I'm sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about this, but his teacher asked him one day what was going on with him. And he said that his stomach hurt when he thought about me. And that shouldn't be, because I'm his mother. I'm the person that gave him life, that nurtured him, that will always be there for him. And somebody shouldn't put him in a place that his stomach hurts when he thinks about me. Like, I'm his best friend, I'm his person. And so, excuse me, that's where the anger kicked in for me, because this person isn't here to see what he's done to my family. And that's something, even on our peer support team, we really hadn't thought about, and that's something I did bring to them, because my peer support team did a fantastic job. I will say overall, I had wonderful support from day one. And that's very important. Like I said, from Chief Moyer on, Chief Moyer was with me in the trauma room as they were getting me in there, pulling clothes off of me, cutting things off and trying to figure out what was going on. And she held my bloody hand. She's short, if anybody knows her. She's kind of up on her tippy toes, but she held my hand and let me know that she was there. And that's huge. She was already at the hospital before I had even arrived. She reached out to my family and stuff. So I'm very grateful to her and the change that she made at Tempe. And our peer support team was top notch during that incident. And it wasn't just the immediate. I still have contact with people even now. And so when it got to the part of my medical retirement, I was told I wasn't going to be able to come back to full duty. I could have fought it. I could have muscled through, but I really had to be honest with myself to see what that would look like. I do have some limited mobility in my hand. I still drop things, and I don't want to put myself or anyone else in that position because I'm not 100%, because I feel like I have something to prove. I have a young family, I have a life, I have other things that I can do. And it was a little bit of a punch in the gut. I knew it was coming, but the first person I called was one of our peer support coordinator, which is retired Sergeant Mike Carlton. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking to you, obviously." And I'm sitting in the parking lot across the street from the Chick-fil-A on University. And he says, okay. He says, do you want me to come be with you, or what do you need right now? I said, no, I just wanted to tell somebody. I could have called my husband, but he was asleep at that time, but I just need to tell somebody. I said, I think I'm just going to drown my sorrows in the Lord's chicken, because that's what we call Chick-fil-A back in Georgia. And then we'll check in later. And so he says, fine, I'll check in with you. So once I let it sit, it was a process, because I'm a control freak. I'm type A, and I want it my way. I will admit that. It's taken me many years to admit that, but I will admit that. And it wasn't my choice to leave policing when I left. Someone else made a shitty decision that affected not just my life, not just my partner's life, but a lot of people's lives. And so I had to sit with trying to get the thing about medicals is your reality, what it is trying to catch up with your emotions. It's trying to catch up with, oh my God, what am I going to do next? So that has been a lot of trial and error over this past year. I'm a stay-at-home mom now, something I never thought I would be, but I wear that badge probably more proudly than I did my law enforcement badge. I get to volunteer at my kids' school. I get to do all the things that I could not be here. I could have not been here to do. My family was camping 2 weeks before my shooting. I am not a camping outdoorsy person, but guess what I'm doing and my family's doing next week for my son's fall break? We're going camping, because that's a memory, and that is something that we need to do often and set those memories, because that could have been the last thing my kids had pictures with me of, an event. I've gone through the whole missing work. I've gone through the imposter syndrome of feeling like I needed to appear busier than I really was, because everybody else is at work and I'm not now. And now I not struggle, but trying to balance being productive over busy. I do peer support now, and I do peer support on a national level now, which has been so much more fulfilling than I ever thought it would be, because I get to talk to us. I get to share my story, hear other people, and let them know you're not the only one that's going through this, and you're not the only one that's going through it like this, right? And just to help us understand that a lot of the things that what we experience, these emotions, they're normal. You're reacting normally to an abnormal situation. We're human. I was a human that wore a uniform. I was not my uniform. My uniform could have gone in that Monday and taken those 3 bullets and the emotions and everything that's come with it over these past 3 years, have it. But guess what? That's not what happened. I was attached to that. My husband, my kids, my mom, my brothers, my friends, like so many people who don't even know me felt that, right? So it's weird, because sometimes life will pick you up. You think you have it all planned out. Life will pick you up and put you on a completely different path. And this path has been very surprising to me these past 3 years. I still have my ups and downs. This path has had its ups and downs. But I think I'm at that point where my shooting forced me to find my passion, okay? Forced me to find my passion. And it's weird, people talk about passion a lot of times, and it has ignited this flame. I want to be your advocate. I want to be the person that's telling your administration, your command staff, if you're not doing debriefs, if you're not allowing officers to see their body cam footage and read their reports, and if you're not helping them to be mentally fit before that big thing happens, you're doing it wrong, you're failing your people, and you're not going to get healthy officers out there working for you. I love every and anything that Chief Gang said. I love hearing a chief have that type of passion and insight, and he's done all the things. He's experimenting with different types of things to be in a better place and to help his people. I still see the same therapist I was seeing before my shooting. I still see her today. I just saw her 2 days ago, and I I've done so many things. Therapy is not the only way. Therapy is useful, but we have to also find other things. I have a whole list of things that I've done. I mean, therapy, talking, EDMR, physical therapy, ERAP is another mental health or first responder mental health organization. They do a 3-day seminar, trauma seminar that me and my husband went. They include your significant other, which is huge, right? I have, I still contact the peer support team. I've done Reiki. I've gotten my chakras rebalanced. I do like this woman, her name is Michelle, and we do like meditation and physical therapy. I see a naturopath. I go to spin class. People think I'm crazy, but spin class is where you can let it all out. That is as close as things like the adrenaline rush that I would get running code or chasing after somebody or something like that. You let it all out there. And I do some of my most clear thinking when I'm on my bike and trying to breathe at the same time, but I do, it just happens. 100 Club hooked me up with a company called Saraset, which you read your brain waves. The Wounded Blue is another organization that I've done training with and that has helped me. The department was such a big help. So I've done all of these things. So if you'll take the time to spend a whole weekend to get in and out of cars to see what car fits you, your lifestyle, and your family, have the same grace and have the same patience when it comes to taking care of yourself mentally and physically. You may not find the right therapist right off, but that's why there's organizations like BluePaz and other of these first responder health and wellness organizations that can get you to people who specialize in us, our lifestyle, and how we think. So give it a chance. Give it a chance. Put the same effort you put into a car that you put it into yourself, put it into your family. So if I can say anything, some things, obviously, please take care of yourself. Please take care of each other. Don't just tell people to reach out. We have to reach in because people aren't always in the place to reach out. If I ever see you on Facebook, if your light is lit up on Facebook and it's late, because I deal with insomnia from time to time, trust me, I Facebook stalk people. I will check in on you and see how you are doing. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, what's going on with you? Hey, how are you doing? If my friend hadn't done that for me the morning of my shooting, I could have still been in my head about all those emotions that I had the week prior, right? Peer support. If you have a peer support team, great, okay? And if it's a great one, even better. You don't have to stick with your peer support team. You can reach out to other peer support teams, okay? It's all confidential. The other thing about peer support is you are your own best advocate. I cannot stress that enough. If you have a shitty experience with your peer support team, you need to tell them that. Don't just take your ball and your shitty experience and walk away because you're not helping anybody. You're not helping anybody at all by doing that. Let them know, because it could just be a blind spot. Maybe it's not malicious, but it's just a blind spot. Like talking to younger kids, like in my case, about a critical incident, right? A blind spot. Tell them, allow them to fix it. Allow them to fix it. Because my granddaddy always said, a closed mouth don't get fed. So if they don't know, you're not giving them a chance to fix it, right? And the last thing I want to leave you with is, because we go out, first responders, we contact people, we have patients, or we have victims. Please fight for yourself the same way you fight for your victims. If you want that suspect to go to jail for doing something wrong to your victim, I want you to have that same fight for yourself, because that is the way they are looking at you, because I want you to be healthy, happy, and I want you to be here for your family. Trust me, your family would much sooner have you broken than not at all. So I'm going to end there. I'm sure Dr. Dara will come on. If anybody has any questions, I will stick around in the chat. I'm also going to, in the chat, I'm going to put my contact information. So my phone number and my email will be in there. So if anybody ever needs to talk peer support wise, has questions about anything I've done, wants to hear more details about my shooting or the aftermath, even the medical retirement process, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference and you have a lovely weekend.
Lindsay, thank you very much. You and I connected this year, and then we've seen each other a few times since, and chatted on the phone and stuff. And hearing your full story today as you unfolded it for everybody is just so touching. I mean, you're seeing the responses here from everybody. Everybody's saying the exact same thing. You helped to save a life today, I'm sure, and I'm sure that you have opened the doors for a lot of people to have more conversations about what it is like to be a woman, what it is like to be a mom. I love the post that Kim Brophy said that, you know, you're as a mom, you're only as strong as your I don't want to bastardize what she said, as your saddest child, I believe what she said. And when your child is sad, that really it brings you to a place of needing to slow things down and get back on track, right, with the things that matter.
100%.
Boy, where do we start? Sherry Martin with FOP asked if she could get in contact with you, so I wanted to kind of go through that and hook up with her for more speaking stuff that she's working on. And hearing what you've said, you know, I don't know how even to address this. I mean, so there's so many components to who you are as a person, right? I mean, you have so many components to yourself. What was your core resiliency or adversity that you have been through that gave you the strength to pull through when you said, you know, the words get up?
You know what? What I didn't mention is, so when I was 17, I lost my dad. Okay, my parents were separated, but my dad was living somewhere else, and we're down the street from us. I'll say I was 17 and he was killed in a home invasion. Okay. And when I was in high school, after high school, excuse me, I would go back and speak to ROTC because I was in ROTC, and I would tell the kids often, and when you're giving advice to other people, a lot of times it's for yourself, right? I would tell people, trauma doesn't have to be who you become. That doesn't have to be who you are, right? And I started kind of building off of that, because if I wore that, how my dad died, on my sleeve all the time, I would never get anything done, and I wouldn't be honoring his legacy in any way, shape, or form, right? And so it was just that piece of, my family is important to me and I want to be with them. You know, I've always said I will always put my family before work or anything else, because your family, those are the people that are with you sometimes before the job, and they're with you whether you retire, get fired, or quit. And you don't want to treat them so poorly during that career that they don't want to be around you once you're around, you know. And like I said, I had babies at home when my critical incident happened, you know. So I think that even though they weren't there with me, but that mother bear, that protectiveness kicked in. And again, it's like, you know, like the song, I will survive. Like this is not how this ends. And, you know, I don't want my story to end like that. I want people to know that if I died that day, that I went down fighting. You know, my kids were going to know that their mother fought to the very, very end.